The top stories this week on RT International. Washington launches its first airstrike in Syria from a Turkish base after pledging to defend US-trained rebels from any attackers. The grandson of former American President Harry Truman tells RT he doubts there'll ever be a flat-out apology from the US for the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as Japan marks the 70th anniversary of the tragedy. And Sweden sees a huge increase in hate crimes. We visit one of the country's worst affected cities. With the top stories from the past 7 days and right up to the moment developments as well. This is The Weekly on RT International. I'm Ewan O'Neill. Welcome to the programme. The US carried out its first airstrike in Syria, launched from a Turkish base this week. Now that Washington has permission to use it, raids from there are expected to be regular. This week's drone attack targeted Islamic State positions. It came after the White House approved the use of American air power to defend the US-backed rebels from any attacks, even if they come from forces loyal to the Syrian government. RT asked the State Department to comment on the legality of such actions, and the spokesperson appeared to be caught off guard.
I frankly don't know what the legal authority is. Our purpose, our main goal, is to take the fight against ISIL. Nothing's changed in that regard. We've been carrying airstrikes out in northern Syria against ISIL. We're continuing to do that. We're doing that as part of a broad coalition.
However, some analysts find the US actions in Syria unlawful. Phyllis Bennis from the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington explained to us why.
There is no real legal basis for this. You know, the UN Charter, which is the document of international law that determines when is a war legal, when is it illegal, has a very narrow definition of when a war is legal. It's really only two things that make it legal. Either it's authorized by the UN Security Council, no, or when a country has been directly attacked, you have a qualified right to use self-defense only until the Security Council can meet to decide what to do. That's it. Any other use of force is illegal. So the notion that we are going to decide this is somehow a lawless area, this is the part of Syria where no one's in control. Really? Who gets to say that? It's that same argument they're trying to apply now. We don't think that the Syrian regime has control there. And so therefore we have the right to do whatever we want. We can go bomb, we can go send ground troops, we can do whatever we want. Very slippery slope, and they're halfway down this slope. They're not still at the top of the slope.
Meanwhile, Russia has come up with a suggestion: form a coalition between those who are already fighting the jihadist group on the ground, including the Assad government. Moscow pointed out ISIL is a common enemy of Washington, Turkey, and the Syrian government.
President Putin's initiative has got everyone's attention. It suggests forming a coalition between the people that are already engaged in combat on the ground and for whom Islamic State is unacceptable. Instead of settling accounts with each other, they should deal with the common threat first, and then start talking between themselves on how to live in their own country.
But so far, the US has ruled cooperation with the Syrian government out of the question. Washington has branded Assad the root of all evil in Syria, while Russia believes the US is applying double standards when it comes to the Syrian government.
The Assad regime, frankly, is the root of all evil here, and frankly, has been instrumental in creating the kind of lawless area to the north where ISIL has been able to get purchase and frankly, extend its roots.
There's a double standard here. When the goal was to get rid of chemical weapons, Bashar Assad was a legitimate partner. But when it comes to fighting terrorism, he is, for some reason, not.
The idea to boost cooperation in the fight against ISIL comes amid a rare show of international unity on the situation in Syria. Earlier this week, the UN Security Council unanimously agreed to launch an inquiry into chemical attacks in the country. Both the US and Russia strongly supported the idea.
Today's decision has a preventative character. It will provide a firm barrier for the future use of toxic chemicals as weapons in Syria.
Today's resolution has been adopted with the Council's unanimous support. This sends a clear and powerful message to all those involved in chemical weapons attacks in Syria.
Well, as you can see, the US and Russia appeared to see eye to eye on the matter this time. That's despite their previous standoff on the issue, with Washington blaming the Assad regime for the chemical attacks and Russia demanding firm evidence. In her earlier statements, the US envoy didn't shy away from blaming the Syrian government.
The Assad regime has again demonstrated its brutality by turning to chlorine as another barbaric weapon in its arsenal against the Syrian people. And we assess that although Assad used more chemical weapons on August 21 than he had before, he has barely put a dent in his enormous stockpile. And it's very important to note that the regime possesses sarin, and we have no evidence that the opposition possesses sarin.
So despite the previous strong rhetoric, Washington now supports the launch of an inquiry. As security analyst Charles Shoebridge pointed out, the UN resolution approved this week was in stark contrast to earlier condemnations.
What we've had up to now is resolutions or attempted resolutions condemning just one side of the Syrian war. As we know, it's a very complex picture there, with many, even including jihadist and extremist groups such as ISIS and al-Qaeda, linked groups such as Al-Nusra Front involved. What we've had on this occasion is a resolution. I've read through the draft resolution just now. It's very neutral in its terminology. It aims to establish an evidence base for then establishing blame for these attacks. And of course, Russia is in agreement with this, because it's always said in the past, yes, we will condemn Assad, but what's the evidence that it's actually Assad doing this? Because at the moment, the evidence is very much, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Well, later in the programme, we return to the Middle East, as one of the sons of ousted Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi is reportedly shown on video being beaten in jail.